Hi, welcome to this podcast where we will explore and examine various thought-provoking books to identify their content's deep meaning and purposes, transferring them into practical applications for everyday living. We will identify their primary attributes, relevance, and application in our lives. And this is what I'm reading now, Live with Purpose. So this month's book is entitled Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers, by Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Maté. And actually it was written initially in 2004, and they've updated it in 2014. It's a parenting book that explores the critical importance of maintaining a strong, nurturing connection between parents and children, particularly in a world where peer influence is increasingly dominant. And I saw Gabor Maté in Boston, I think it was 2018. Anyway, really amazing speaker. So why did I choose this book? So I work in an academic setting with children, and I wanted to read something that would be a benefit to parents, something that I could share knowledge and information that can help them with their parenting. And so I chose this book because it has some really great insights on parenting, especially the primary role of a parent is to develop a healthy attachment to children. So the book is all about healthy attachment and what it looks like, how it works, and what it fosters in children. So it's really a critical part of childhood development, this attachment theory. And so this is why I read this book, hoping, once again, to be relevant for parents and to help them navigate child rearing. So the book is structured into three parts. The first part is the problem, explores peer orientation, its causes and impact on children, supported by real-life examples. So really, the problem is peer orientation. If a child doesn't have a healthy attachment to their primary caregiver, the child is susceptible to be oriented toward their peers, which is really unhealthy. Not that they shouldn't have peers, but they shouldn't be oriented toward them. The book looks at solutions, details strategies, which we'll be going over, tailored to different developmental stages and family dynamics. And then it looks at a prevention, like what can you do as a parent to prevent your child from becoming peer-oriented? And long-term perspective offers guidance on fostering lifelong attachment and preventing peer orientation. So what are some key themes and concepts we'll be looking at? Parents must actively nurture their relationship with their children to counter the pull of peer influence. And everyone knows that if you're anywhere, you see children, young people on screens all day long, hours upon hours. And that actually is influencing them. That peer influence, especially on social media, is influencing who they are, what they decide to do, how they see themselves. So basically, the authors are saying you have to mitigate that by being present as a parent. And then you have to develop emotional connection is more important than discipline or control in shaping a child's behavior and well-being. So really the premise of this whole attachment theory is that if a parent is attached to the child is attached to the parent appropriately, adequately, their emotional needs are met. If a child's emotional needs are met, they're not going to go to their peers to have those needs met because the parent is there. The book empowers parents to trust their instincts and prioritize their role, even in a culture which often undervalues it. So let's look at the first real point that they make, the importance of parent-child attachment. The book emphasizes that children thrive when they are deeply connected to their parents or primary caregivers. This attachment provides a secure base for emotional growth, resilience, and decision-making. So when the parent has fostered this appropriate attachment, basically you have developed like a strong base for your child. And in that place, they develop emotional resilience, growth, and they become their own person. So the authors argue that modern society shifts, which we see, such as busy schedules, increased screen time, cultural emphasis on peer socialization, like let the kids play together for hours and hours and hours, have weakened parent-child bonds, leading to peer orientation. That's where they get that term, where children look to their peers for guidance and identity instead of parents. They advocate that a secure attachment to parents provides children with emotional stability, like I said, resilience, and a foundation for healthy development. So let's look at how does attachment actually develop. So we're going to look at 6 ways of attaching. The first is through their senses. So when a mother is nursing a child, so the child is using their sensors to attach. The smell of the mother, just the eye gaze, the physical proximity to the mother, skin to skin, all of the senses are causing the child to attach to that mother, to that primary caregiver. When attachment is working appropriately, the child actually wants to be the same. They said another way a child attaches is through sameness. A child seeks to be like those they feel closest to. And it's funny, I saw this many years ago with one of my grandsons, just as he was I think he was maybe 7 or 8, and he was heading out one day, and he chose to take his father's cap and put it on his head. Yes, a child attaches to that primary caregiver by sameness, by being like that parent. Choosing to wear that hat demonstrates it. A child develops attachment through belonging and loyalty. This is our family. This is what we do. On the weekends, this is where we go. Sense of belonging. Significance. Attachment develops through significance. A child needs to feel that they matter to someone. So when a parent is attentive, a parent is there, a parent is present, typically through the first 4 years of life, especially through the first 4 years of life, the child feels attached to that primary giver. The 5th way is through feeling. The child needs to experience warm feelings, loving feelings, affectionate feelings, to pursue emotional intimacy. You're really, as a parent, if you're developing and fostering a healthy attachment, you're actually developing emotional intimacy with the child, which child needs that. That's the foundation. A child has to be dependent on you, emotional intimacy, in order to become independent. And the 6th way is the child needs to be known. A healthy attachment provides the child with a desire to keep the closeness they have with the parent. This is so true. If the parent has a healthy attachment with the child wants to be close to the parent. You see this. Like I was trying to pick up a 6-month-old baby from a parent, and the baby's like, nope, no, I don't know you. I'm attached to my primary caregiver. I want them. See how that they didn't know me, but they knew their parent. The second step that they talk about and they discuss here is developmental perspective. The psychologist introduces, like I said, the concept of attachment hierarchy, where children naturally seek guidance from those they are most attached to. This is so true. You see the 2-year-old, the 1.5-year-old, they'll look to their primary caregiver. Is this good? Can I go here? Can I do this? They look to them. When parents maintain this role as a primary attachment figure, children are more likely to develop, once again, confidence, empathy, and independence. So basically, the book discusses the different stages of childhood and adolescence, emphasizing that even teenagers need strong parental connections despite their push for autonomy. And I know that a lot of parents think, oh, my children are teenagers, I can kind of let go, not be present as much, not be there as much as I needed to be when they were younger. But actually, they discuss that you do need to be there, especially during those teen years. You want to maintain the attachment so that you can be the primary influence on your child, not their peers. Then they go on to discuss the dangers of peer orientation. They said peer orientation can lead to behavioral issues, emotional insecurity, and lack of individuality, which is really a key, and I want to just discuss this a little bit. If a child has the right, healthy attachment to a parent, which begins with dependence and then it ends with independence, they actually become who they're supposed to be. They have this sense of individuality, and so they don't conform to their peer groups or develop their own sense of self. And the authors actually call this, when a child doesn't have this individuality, can't say no to the peers. If everybody's smoking cigarettes, the child can't say no, they go along. The authors actually say this is called a preschool syndrome, and that basically children are emotionally stunted where they fail to grow up. They fail to grow up and become their own person with their own ideas because they just conform to their peers. So they're stuck emotionally at a preschool syndrome. The authors highlight how peer-oriented children may become more rebellious, distant from family, or susceptible to negative influences like bullying. And they have an entire section on bullying. And I just want to highlight one part of the bullying. So they talked about how do children become bullies? What happens? One way, they said, is that that child may have had a parent that bullied them, or maybe even siblings. And so the child, as they're maturing, they develop this idea, I don't want to be bullied anymore, so they become the bully. They become the bully. So it just shows you that it doesn't happen in a vacuum, a child becoming a bully. But when a child is peer-oriented, they employ risky behaviors, conformity. They try to be like everyone else, and it actually leads to mental health struggles. And you see this because so many children now, because they're spending so much time on screens or on social media with other peers, they are really developing some serious mental health struggles. This is huge, and this is from this peer-oriented concept. They say that the shift can lead to rebellion once again, detachment from family, and challenges in developing a strong sense of self. So when a parent says, I don't have to be around so much, my teenagers, they're teenagers, they don't need to be around. You're actually creating a void. And now the child goes to their peers for acceptance, their peers for intimacy, their peers for belonging, and that's not good. You should be the sole primary. And they actually shared some research, which I really thought it was interesting, from a 60 Minutes video that showed that in a South African wildlife reserve, the rangers decided to kill many of the adult elephants whose young were old enough to survive without them because there was too many elephants. So they just say, we'll just kill some of these adults. And what they found was that they left the young elephants fatherless. And these young elephants who didn't have male role models started beating up on each other and killing each other. So it just shows you that, yes, you have to have the adult supervision, you have to have adults in the mix, and so to help children develop to maturity, and they don't get stuck in this preschool syndrome. So then they talk about reclaiming the parental role. And we're seeing a lot today, it's called gentle parenting, where you just don't do very much. But actually, they're advocating you have to maintain your parental role. And they offer practical strategies for parents to strengthen their connection with their children and reclaim their role as a primary influence. You want to be the primary influence on your child, not the TV, not the screens, not the video, not the artists. You want to be the primary influence. And so how do you do that? How do you foster attachment? They said creating rituals, spending quality time, of course, and being emotionally available, meaning being emotionally available. So one way you do that is to be aware of their needs and meet them. Yes, to be aware of their needs. So when a child is gone many, many, many hours, it's hard for a parent to know what the child needs. And so you may overreact or not react. So it's important to be aware of their needs and meet them. I love this concept that they share. They said attention follows attachment, and they have a whole section on ADHD. Attention follows attachment. If the child is attached to you, they're going to be attending to you. They're going to be listening to you. So this is like a key piece here, that if you have fostered a healthy attachment, the child's going to listen. They're going to be attending. They say that if you are distracted, your child will meet their emotional needs elsewhere. And I remember reading about some issues that the Chinese were having many years ago when they had their one-child policy. And what they found was that these young men, typically it was a young boy, the parents would go off to work. So the young men were all alone in their home. They had really nothing else to do. So what did? They went on the internet. And many of them became addicted to the internet to the point where the Chinese government had to create rehab centers for young boys who were addicted to the internet because they had to meet their emotional needs somewhere. The parents weren't available. They went to the internet. The authors talk about one way that they foster attachment, and that in this house, they in the morning when they get up, they just spend some 10 minutes or so on the couch, just snuggling, talking, and so always bringing back the child to attachment, because anytime you're disattached, even like through the night, is a disruption in the attachment. So they talked about having morning warm-up time. So what they really found was that the foundation of a child's true self is a sense of being accepted, loved, and enjoyed. And that happens through attachment. So what's something else we can do as we're fostering attachment? Setting healthy structures and setting healthy boundaries. So what they provide here is that the boundaries and expectations while maintaining warmth and avoid pushing children towards peer acceptance. So what happens is parents, when they see their child kind of drifting away, they start implementing these really strong boundaries. And he said, no, you have to have boundaries, but they have to be maintained in a warmth, accepting way. And so he uses the word soft power by guiding through connection rather than control, ensuring children feel safe following parental guidance. So they give the example. They said instead of demanding compliance with rules, explain their purpose calmly and invite cooperation and a shared sense of purpose. So basically, establishing your rules while maintaining warmth and understanding. And then they make the point that less power leads to the use of more force. So if your child is misbehaving, and children do, instead of looking at the child and say, what's wrong with the child, we need to look at the attachment, because that means you don't have power. If you had a healthy attachment, you would have power over the child. The child would want to listen to you. So that's why they say less power leads to the use of more force. If you have to use more force, you have to look at the attachment. And they give many anecdotes of parents who looked, they would meet with the parents. They would have like counseling with the parents to say, okay, why do you have to be so forceful? Let's look at what's missing. They said, this is a key point, a child only models those they feel strongly attached to. The child's going to want to do what you want them to do if you have a healthy attachment. When a child is acting out, is the very best time, they said, to get closer to the child. So a lot of times when we're disciplining children, we'll cause them to go to their room, we'll distance them. And they said, actually, that's the time you have to get close to the child. If the child is acting out, you have to actually do the opposite of what comes natural. And I can remember when I read this book initially years ago, one of my daughters used timeout. And I remember her sending her young son either to another room or upstairs to the bedroom, and I thought, that's not good. That's not good. I said, so instead of sending them away, because now you're causing a detachment from the attachment, I said, have the child just sit in the room. Just sit in the room. So you're always thinking about keeping the attachment. They also go on to talk understanding developmental needs, recognizing that children, yes, need guidance and structure, especially during adolescence, going back to that. And they make the point that the parent should be the compass point. So if you have a healthy attachment that you've developed with your child, you're meeting their needs, their emotional needs, you're present, you understand them, you're showing them warmth and love, you become the compass point. You become the compass point where the child looks to you to provide direction and stability. And this is why they say dependence is the source of the power to parent. If the child's looking to you, hey, mom, hey, parent, am I supposed to do this? They're going to want to follow your lead. They said that attachment makes the child want to be good for the parent. And this is true. I've seen it. Attachment leads to obedience. A child's innate desire is to be good, to maintain the parent's attachment. So I know that like a lot of discipline now in schools is to send a child out of the room because a child's unruly. But actually it's creating another layer of problems because now the child doesn't feel attached to the class, doesn't feel a sense of belonging. You're creating another kind of anxiety in the child because the child wants to be close. The child wants to be part of the class or part of the family. The authors also go on to critique the culture. And they say that societal trends that prioritize early socialization like daycare or independence, like a child should be totally independent, or peer-based activities are over family closeness. They argue that schools, media, cultural norms often undermine parental influence, making it harder for parents to maintain their role. It's true. And they actually go into why they don't think daycare at an early age is really good, because they said that, yes, people, they advocate for daycares because they say, well, I want my child to be socialized. But they make the point that what kind of socialization? Because they make the point that gangs and orphanages have lots of kids together, but that doesn't mean they're developing good, healthy social skills. They advocate that the first 4 years of life is critical in developing a healthy attachment. It should be to the parent, not to the peers. If you put the child with peers, even as young as like 2 or 3, now the child is becoming peer-oriented. The child is looking to the peers for the attachment, for the emotional stability, and looking to them to give the cues instead of the parents. They argue that fostering strong family connections is essential in a world that often prioritizes independence, send them off to school really young, or peer-based activities. And then they have an entire section on social media and screens, and like I said, they updated in 2014. And basically what they found is that video games lead to depression. The more time a child spends on video games or any kind of screen, it actually will lead to emotional difficulties like depression. And what they said was that because the intimacy, a child, remember, needs intimacy, but video games or video screens or any kind of social media provides false intimacy. It's not real. It's empty. And they said that digital intimacy spoils the appetite for what a child truly needs, which is true intimacy. And then they said that actually what happens is they never seek the real thing. Now we're seeing this because there's a phenomenon now on porn. So many young people are doing porn and on the screens. And so what happens is that's a fake intimacy. So now these young men are not pursuing the real thing, real relationships. And you can see that is due to this intimacy that's empty in the screens. So now let's look at some key strategies that they discuss. And I love this term that they coined. It says, collect before you direct. Collect before you direct, even when you're providing guidance or discipline, by establishing an emotional connection. This involves making eye contact, or offering warm, smile, gentle touch, and engaging in a way that makes the child feel seen and valued. So you can do this when you're greeting a child when they come home, asking about their day, showing genuine interest, addressing homework or chores. Remember, collect before you direct. So let me give you an example that they shared in the book. So this one family, they were at a pool, and one of the young boys was hitting everybody with the pool noodle. Of course, we've all seen that. And so the author said, instead of yelling at the child, hey, stop that, and get out of the pool, and now you've lost your privilege, blah, blah. He said, no, instead what you should do is you collect the child. You call the child over, you look at them face to face, you say, I know you're having a great time, but you can't be hitting your cousins with the pool noodle. And then you have them sit with you for 5 minutes and then go back in the pool. So you collect, then you direct. Another strategy they recommend is creating rituals and routines, such as shared meals, bedtime stories, weekly activities. You want to provide predictable moments for connection, helping children feel safe and secure. And a lot of people I know are doing nightly reading together. It could be a family walk. You could go out and just throw a football. Just ways of connecting. Then they talk about how do you preserve attachments through transitions, because transitions can be really difficult for children, especially those that just struggle being away from their parents. And then they say that even then, during transitions, you should maintain the child's connection. So how do you do that? By talking to the child about transitions in advance, and then just reassuring them, okay, we're going to be gone for the weekend, but I'm going to be coming back. And you can do this. Other examples include at the start of a school year. So you want to spend extra one-on-one time, discuss their experience, and reinforce your role as a safe place. The authors talked about how they were having one of the authors was having some struggles with his teenage daughters, and he felt that they were kind of distancing themselves and becoming more peer influenced. So what this author did was he took some time off from work and rented a cottage somewhere on the Cape, I think, and then took one daughter at a different time just to spend 2 or 3 days connecting with that one child. So he wanted to reestablish that attachment if it was waning. They say that you need to be the source of attachment needs. Parents should aim to meet their child's emotional needs for closeness, significance, belonging, reducing the likelihood of seeking it from others. How do you do that? By listening without judgment and validating their feelings. So if a child is upset about a peer conflict, listen emphatically. Help them process emotions rather than immediately offering solutions. And basically what they want you to do in terms of being a source of attachment needs, especially during those teen years, because your children are going to want to spend time with their friends. Have the friends come to your house. So one author said, we have the friends come to our house. Our house is where all the peers meet. And then as a parent, you have to make the effort to know your children's peers, know their names, know what they like, get to know their parents. This is how you still keep your child attached even as they're with their peers. And then they say that if you have to, let's say you have to limit time that your child is with their peers, they really advocate that you fill the void with yourself. So that's huge, because a lot of parents are like, oh, that's it, you're off the screens, you're not doing this, but then they just leave the child alone. They say, fill the void with yourself. Fill the void with yourself. They said, if you are distracted, your child will meet their emotional needs elsewhere. It's true. And parents are so distracted. The child is left. Now what do they do with those emotional needs? For intimacy, for connection, for belonging, for significance. They find it in other places. They find it among their peers, or they find it on social media. They say that you should foster a sense of significance. And this, they talked about helping the child to identify their unique contributions and reinforcing their sense of belonging. You involve them in family decisions. Maybe you're planning a trip. You help them. You allow them to help you plan the trip. You help them find their household project role. The other point they make in terms of strategies is use play to connect, to reconnect. And that could be done through sports, that could be done through playing games, or maybe your child has a hobby and you do it together. You do it together. That's a way of forming connection. They said that you should shield against peer orientation by by changing the environment so that they don't have a lot of unsupervised time with peers or media, or which glorifies peer dependence. They said to monitor social media. One way you can do that is by setting up boundaries around devices. And they advocate that you should really have all your media in the living room, in the family room, so that the child isn't left to the media on their own. I know a lot of families do this. And no media in a child's bedroom. And I know that when I'm working with children, sometimes they'll be really exhausted, and I'll say to them, so what time did you go to bed? And they'll, well, I'm to bed at 9. I said, well, yeah, but did you sleep? I said, oh, no, my parent lets me watch TV until I fall asleep, or I'm on my phone until 11. So you don't want any media in a child's bedroom. They said that you should bridge separations. We talked a little bit about that, so that when the child's not with you, I'm thinking like of a kindergarten or a first grader, maybe leaving a small note in the child's lunchbox, or older child texting them. And then I love this last point for strategies. It's cultivate a village of attachment, which this really fits in with me, because here he talks about the child needs the parents, but they also need an extended village, and that can include parents, grandparents, teachers, mentors that reinforce the parents' roles. And this is where they talk about like maybe having game night. And so the authors do extensive traveling, and both of them had mentioned how they went to Europe, whether it was, I think, Portugal or Spain. And what they noticed in Europe, and this is true, the young people in Europe are not peer dependent like they are here in America. And what they identified as a difference, a key difference, is that it was intergenerational communities. The parents, the grandparents, they all spent time together. It's like what we do here in our nation is we send the parents off to one place, the teenagers off to another place, and the children off to another place. There in Europe, they are intergenerational. Everybody does everything together. Do you see how they've built a village that helps aid attachment, the village? You need other people in your children's lives. They said, maybe identifying something to do as game night, which after I read this, I said, oh, we have to have a game night so that I can have some peer, I can influence the next generation in that way. So that's the book. Let me just share once again a recap on the takeaways. Strong parent-child attachment is essential for healthy development and resilience against negative peer influence. You don't want your child to be influenced by their peers. You want your child to be influenced by you. Parents can counter peer orientation by prioritizing emotional connection, setting boundaries that are healthy with warmth, and fostering rituals to reinforce family bonds. This is what you want to do. So once again, I hope you enjoy this podcast Purpose, where I share unconventional ideas, which I have, information and research. I hope you implement some of these recommendations. I know I've learned a lot and am trying to implement them myself. And I hope to see you next month as we learn what I'm reading now, Live with Purpose. Thanks for joining me.